10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us? Welcome back to 10 Steps Further. Another episode. Hey, we just re-released an episode the other day.
We did. We've done that twice now.
Yeah.
You have to have said something really important, or we have to really like you, or we're tired and we don't want to do a podcast.
There
one of those
there
three, you figure out what it was, Gino.
There it is.
Gino was on, and we re-released it. What was the title of that?
The title was, I'm Not a Racist, or at least I don't think I am. So we basically covered every white person.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or I just lost some listeners. I don't know. Something like that.
And then we brought Gino back. So we haven't had him back since we recorded that one. We re-released it, and he's back with us today.
So here's where we're going today. Gino played football. We're going to introduce him. We're going to let him talk. In fact, we've been here for 45 minutes, and we've done nothing but let him talk. So that will not be a problem. I'm just assuring you. But I want to at least set him up because Gino, professional football player, big high school career. In fact, I didn't show you this. Gino showed me a picture or a video of him smacking down on Jim Harbaugh in college.
I don't know who that is.
Jim Harbaugh was the coach. He's the coach of Michigan. He was the coach of the 49ers.
And at USD.
And one of my buddies had a job, and then Jim Harbaugh took the coaching job, and he fired my friend. So anytime Jim Harbaugh can be hit, I'm very all for it.
Okay.
That's funny. That's great.
And you've brought that hit up with Jim, haven't you?
Oh, I have. Anytime I see him,
when was it? Tell me give me the scenario.
Oh, heck, he was with the Chargers, and I was out on the field with some of my buddies, and we saw each other, and I said, "Hey, Jim." And he goes, I was like, "Hey, man, you remember when I slammed you on your head?" He goes, yeah. And then he goes, "But we won the game." I said, "Yeah, but I slammed you on your head."
It's a good hit.
Every time I see it.
It's a good hit. If we have the opportunity, we'll put it up on our show notes so people can see it.
There we go. Is it in color? You said it's
It's
way
in
back.
color?
I love it.
Yeah, it was still friends. People were drawing the picture.
Yeah.
So there's been obviously a lot going on in our country. It's been a very racially charged environment that we're in, and so this conversation will be racially charged. So we're just going to say that right up front. But the point of our topic today is 3 lessons I've learned about leadership from the football field. And Gino has a whole lot more experience in leadership on the football field than I do have. I watch football. I understand the rules. Jonathan has yet to see a game. I think that's where we're at.
I watch one game almost every year. Well, I watch commercials during one game almost every year. Doritos usually.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
And last year, I think, was at my house, and we had food, and Jonathan ate the food while the game was on, and then he made us turn it up during commercials.
And I sat in the seat that nobody wanted because you really couldn't see the screen. So I was basically I was watching people watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. That's good.
I love it.
That's good. So, Gino, just give us a little background on who you are, where you're coming from, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Gino Mingo, born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Deeply embedded in football. My dad was an original Denver Bronco. During a very racially charged time.
Right.
From 60 to 71 he played.
Does he still have any records for the Broncos?
He does. He still has a few records. He has one that'll never be broken.
Which is?
He's the only person in NFL history to score 50 yards or more in 6 different ways.
Okay, give me the 6.
Wow.
This will be an education for Jonathan.
So he was the first black NFL field goal kicker, so he kicked field goals for over 50 yards. He took a punt back, the inaugural punt back against the Boston Patriots.
Oh, wow.
They drew them in stick figures back then, John. And,
so there's no evidence.
The inaugural game in the AFC and won the game for the Broncos. Then he took a kickoff back for a touchdown. So you got field goals, kickoff, punt return.
Right.
Then he still has, I think, the longest run from scrimmage for the Broncos.
Wow.
He played running back as well.
Yeah.
He then threw for a touchdown, caught for a touchdown,
Wow.
and then
Is that 5 or 6? I can't remember. I wasn't keeping track.
that was after I was running. So field goals, kickoff, punt, running, caught, and threw
Yeah, that's
for a
it.
touchdown.
That's
so
it. And
And so
how
he's
many
always-
current NFL records do you have, Gino?
the only record I have is I can boast about my dad's record.
I don't know. You can boast about playing.
I
That's
know,
enough is
right?
a big
Right?
achievement.
Right? I've only.
Now, I firmly believe in my heart, had God not taken me in a different direction, I'd have some records. But, that's between me and myself. So.
Well, we just love you, man. I want you to introduce yourself like you introduced yourself at the rally that we just had in our community.
Oh,
All this
gosh.
stuff is going on, and God's given you a platform to communicate some things that I think are really important. And so we're gonna take advantage of that platform just a little bit. All right?
Okay. Well, yes, at the rally, when I finished my time to speak, I introduced myself, and I told people how I would introduce myself. And I said to them, "Hi, my name is Gino Mingo. I'm a child of God." I did this because, for me, my identity solely comes, everything about me is based in my identity in God. So I said, "Hi, my name is Gino Mingo. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a child of God." "Hi, I'm Gino Mingo. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a man of God." "Hey, what's happening? I'm Gino Mingo. I'm a husband of God." "Hey, what's going on? I'm Gino Mingo, a father of God." "Hey, it's good to see you. Where you been at? My name's Gino Mingo. At Vaughn's, when we met each other, I am a godly pastoral prophet." I go, "Hey, I'm Gino Mingo. How you doing? I'm a godly coach, and every time that I get a chance to pour into your children, I'm going to try to cause them to flourish. How you doing? I'm Gino Mingo, a black man." And I did that because so many times we look at people and we identify them by what we see first. And I wanted people to understand, no, you don't get to determine who I am. I'm going to identify myself for you. And I wanted everybody to realize, when I look in the mirror, the first thing that I don't think is I'm a black man. The first thing I think is that I am a child of God. And all those other things fall into place. And me being black was way down on the list.
It's the color God chose for you.
It is. And I tell people all the time, I go, look, the only grounds that I have to be proud at all about being black is that God decided the best Gino Mingo that would walk this earth from 1965 until whenever was this shade, this height, these color eyes. That's it. I can take no credit in that. And that's where I'm like going, you're being very prideful about something that you had nothing to do with.
Yeah. And God raises people up like you, Gino, to speak and to be a voice in certain areas of our life. And now the platform has come, right? You've had lots of platform.
Yeah. It's been an interesting season.
Yeah.
God prepares us for things, and I do feel like I've been prepared for a time such as this. Many reasons. The fact that I'm married to someone who's white, that opens the door for me to address a lot of different issues. I have 5 beautifully mixed daughters. It's funny. We even gave our kids different descriptions. Like, one was milk chocolate, one was cinnamon. One I'm like, "Hey, come here, butterscotch."
Right.
Different things because they're all little different shades of,
Right.
One's Ginger, and her name is Ginger. So we did that because what I want to celebrate, that before time began, God fearfully and wonderfully made us, and He knew what we were supposed to look like, what our purpose on this earth was, and so I look at Him and I say, "Hey, He decided that you look like that," and that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about certain lessons that you learned on the football field. I'm not sure what they all are. I'm sure that Gino's got some great things to say. But the one that I wanted to talk about first, we already talked a little bit about. Played college football where?
At Oregon
State,
yeah.
right?
In the
Beavers,
80s.
not Ducks.
Yeah, Beavers.
You gotta hate the Ducks.
Oh man. I always tell people, what can a duck do besides quack? At least mine could smack the heck out of you with his tail. I'm like, come on, man.
And there were people, people would be chanting your name, screaming your name as you excelled on the field. What position you play?
I played defensive end.
Okay,
all right. Linebacker.
Right, so hitting people.
Yep, hitting people.
Better to give than to receive. If we're going to get
you.
Biblical.
Yes, biblical. I gave a lot, man. I gave a lot.
So talk to me about that story that you were just telling us about, where you're on the field one day and then you're riding a motorcycle the next.
Yeah, well, it was just interesting because, that was a little college town, Corvallis, Oregon.
Right.
So on a Saturday, stuff shut down and people came and watched football.
Right.
And I can just remember being a junior. And when you play football, people don't always know what you look like. You take your helmet off, but they see you from way up in the stands.
Right.
And I just had a couple instances where this one gentleman in his truck, I was borrowing my friend's moped. And 2 times.
Did you hear what he just said?
Yeah.
Moped.
You know what that is, Jonathan? A moped?
Scooter.
Yeah.
It's like a scooter.
Yeah,
there
you got
go.
one right out front.
Okay, you got one. All right.
So we just bonded. We all have
we
manly,
bonded. Yeah.
manly scooters.
That's right.
And he had one of those fast ones that would go like 60.
Ooh, he just threw it in our face. We got 38 miles an hour.
Yeah, my boy, he bought
the
Big Daddy that could go like 60. So
Right.
it was cool to roll around in his,
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, there were 2 times that he sped up behind me, and I had to turn off the street. And once he did, he pulled over, rolled down his window, and he said, "Nigger, get out the street." Now, the thing that was so funny to me about that was that I'm pretty sure for 3 years, my sophomore, junior, senior year, every time I made a tackle, the announcer would yell, "Gino, Mingo," on the tackle. I couldn't stand it at first. And so every time I made a tackle.
You seem to have adopted it,
Yeah.
though.
Eventually,
He now says it every time he does something good. Like
He
just
makes me say it on the street.
It was crazy. Well, that's what would happen, man. I'd be walking on campus and someone, man, a block away would do that. And I was like, oh, my God, would you stop?
That's cool.
And then I was like, someone said something. He goes, man, I wish they were yelling my name like that. And then I took it as an honor, you know.
Yeah.
But I know that guy sat in the stands and yelled my name when I was sacking the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But Sunday through Friday, I was a nigger. And it's just one of those things that you have to grow up with reconciling.
Right. How old are you, Gino?
I'm 55 in
54 years old. And I just like to continue to point out to whoever I can hear it, who will listen, this is recent history. This isn't, hey, way back in the day in Alabama. No, this is West Coast, recent history. This happened.
Yeah.
I'm reading Arthur Ashe's autobiography, and this just the kind of things that happen. This is right around the time I was born. He's rising up in the ranks, higher and higher rated as a player. But when he was 18 years old, they won a tournament, and he had battled for 4 or 5 years, and they'd always done very poorly. And he and his buddy finally won this tournament. Well, wouldn't you know, they canceled the award ceremony, and they just left their trophies out on the bench for them to pick up on their way out.
Yeah.
When they won, when he and his black friend won.
Yeah. My 2 uncles, they've gone to be with the Lord. They were tennis pros in Denver. One was a high school tennis coach actually won state and still was treated that same way at times.
Yeah.
And, that, man, you're talking about in the 80s.
Right.
I shared at the rally how one of the cheerleaders, my freshman year, we were freshmen together, and we became friends. And, it's hard. I lived in Denver, Colorado. So I was raised when they started desegregation.
Okay.
They started busing kids in from other areas. So the Hispanic kids were bussed in, the black kids were bussed in. We had just recently moved out to Southeast Denver where there were more white people. So the kids were being bussed into these schools and others were being bussed out. And, it's 1983. I'm going to Oregon. The white kids in Oregon and those rural kids, they were not used to black people. What they really saw on TV was that black people were gangsters and drug dealers and pimps and different things. And so you have these ball players coming from Detroit.
Fred Sanford.
Yes, Fred yes, you big dummy. But coming from Detroit and Chicago and Los Angeles. And I went to a high school where there was 3,600 kids, and 44 of us were black. The year before I got there, they had a legitimate 21 Jump Street sting going on. It was like one of the richest schools in the state. That year, it was #1 in the nation for grades and for drugs.
Wow.
So my experience, growing up was really eclectic. So I already had, what it was to mix in that sense. So for me coming to campus, it was different than some of my teammates coming from Inglewood, California, and south side of Chicago, and so I'll never forget this girl. She's a social media friend, Facebook friend. We're still friends today. She looked at me, and her face got really red, bright red, and she goes, "I want to ask you a question," and I'm like, "What?" And I'm laughing. I go, "What's wrong?" And she goes. And then she looks at me and she points at me and she goes, "Does that come off when you take a shower?"
Wow.
And I said, What? And she goes, "Does that come off when you take a shower?" And I laughed. And then she hit me out of being embarrassed. She goes, "Don't," because she was sincerely asking me that.
Wow.
And I know people would want to get angry about that. I couldn't. I was like, you know what? I just thought to myself, man, bless your heart. I'm like, where are you living that you would literally think? I'm like, I'm in Oregon. It rains 9 months. Don't you think by now you would see whether this comes off or not? I'm just saying.
Right.
But I'm what do you do with that? Either you choose to let it just become a wound and it handicaps you and it hinders you and it affects the lenses of your goggle, or you can choose to view things differently. You can choose to understand where someone's coming from. And for me, obviously walking with God, I have a lot of grace.
So you just mentioned something that I think is the practice that we all need to get into, that you yourself practice. And that is hearing somebody else's story, finding out where they're from. Yeah. When all of this rhetoric starts taking place, what I want to do, or what people want to do generally, is defend where they're at and why what they're at is okay.
Yeah.
And here I want you to understand, well, yeah, I get it that you've walked through this, but let me help you understand the things that I've been through. And to me, that will always keep you in your own silo. But when you start asking questions to the people around you of different race, there are certain things that women will have to face that men don't. As long as you continue to defend yourself, you'll never learn.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Jonathan? On
what do you think? Yeah.
Taking it in?
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think one of the I grew up in eastern Washington. We're like bordered of Idaho.
Yeah.
So it's basically Idaho. And so I think the biggest thing through this whole time that I'm learning is I have no idea what I have no idea about. I think that's the biggest thing. 'Cause I was telling you, like as far as like racism, for me was almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it was like in our school system and stuff and growing up. And even if it was there, it was racist against nobody other than maybe somebody on TV, which for most of us, we all kind of idolized everybody. Like we were seeing athletes and musicians and things like this. And so this whole, I remember like the Rodney King riots.
Yeah.
And I mean, to us, that was just another thing that happened on TV.
Right.
There was nothing, like zero change. It was like, what are they doing in LA? Oh, okay. Like, and it was, I don't even feel like there was judgment. Like, we didn't even know what was going on. We're just like, we're so removed from it. It was probably similar to what people in other countries feel about us right now. Mm. They're watching it and they're like, wow, these Americans just can't get along. They're all wild. And that was us, man. We're just like this corner of Washington State that's just like, I have no idea.
I had an interesting conversation with my wife because she has a friend we both have a friend that was Chicago cop, white guy. And so when he would walk into certain neighborhoods, he would get treated very poorly. And my wife said that, yes, I get that, but you get to go home. Right?
Right.
So, and I look at, for you can't watch the Rodney King trial and separate because you've experienced, you've been run off the road. Your dad faced some, we talked about it last time, some of the racism that he felt on the football field, losing his job because of the color of his skin, losing, was it your sister?
My sister.
Your sister.
Yeah.
Just help us understand that. Well, we just heard it on the podcast, but essentially, because of racism, you can't not feel emotion, and you can't be separate. You can't afford to.
And I think what's a big struggle for people, because like John's like, I didn't really experience racism, is that what I always bring to people's, I'd like to bring to the forefront, is that I think too many times when we address the situation, you start in the middle of the story.
Right.
And because you find yourself in the middle of the story and you didn't really experience what was at the beginning of the story or anything from the point of the beginning of the story to where you're at, you start to justify yourself.
Right.
And so that's where, as I like to say, and I said to you earlier, when we start to discuss this topic, the minute that somebody white starts to justify their position, it becomes the Charlie Brown cartoon to someone black. Like when the adults and the teachers would talk, it was like, wah, 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 wah.
Right.
That's what happens. The ears just turn off because you cut me off at my knees. You tell me that my emotions and what I've experienced and what I feel is inconsequential. Gino, you're just not seeing it right. You're just missing it. You're just hurt, or you're just finding you don't want to work hard enough. You don't want to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're looking for a handout. And it's just one of those things where you go, gosh, where do I turn?
Right.
See, now we have the racist thing. We're like,
right.
Where do we go? If the people who are supposed to protect us are killing us, then what do we do? If you won't hear me, then where do I turn? Where do I go?
I have a lifetime of experiences and there's not a question in my mind that there's nobody in this room that doesn't think that what happened with a policeman's knee on his neck is the right thing to do. But it doesn't trigger the lifelong of emotions. I was reading the book Coach Wooden and Me by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Mm-hmm. Beautifully written. Yeah, it's amazing. But they walk into a restaurant after winning the championship. Coach Wooden and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the older woman walks up, and she's congratulating them, and then she says, and I can't say the word, you can say it. She says, I didn't know they made ends this big.
This big, yeah.
And Coach Wooden said nothing. And Kareem was hoping that he would come to his rescue, but he did not. And as he describes in the book, and he's always very honoring of Coach Wooden, very honoring. What he says in the book is, look, Coach Wooden believed that there was something good in everyone, but based on my experiences walking through life as a 7'2" black man, having people at Oregon State chanting against him, using that word,
That word,
every game.
Yeah.
Says, I didn't have the right and privilege to see something
Hey.
good in everyone.
I had some experiences at Oregon State, not just that, but even tied into football. That
Right.
were just one of my lessons that you talk about, like, leadership lessons from football has to do with that. It's just, um,
Okay,
just
what's the lesson?
faithfulness, loyalty.
Okay.
I missed one practice my whole collegiate career. And the reason why I missed that practice is my trainer made me sit out. I think we were playing Wazoo or somebody in the Pac-10. I had a tremendous game. I had 3 sacks.
Okay.
I had 10 unassisted.
You hated Wazoo too.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. All right, just want
I
to go
had
on the record.
10 unassisted tackles.
Wow.
4 assisted tackles. Right before halftime, I was making a tackle, and one of my players spears me in my back.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I'm having a hard time breathing. And
Your own player.
yeah, I'm
Friendly
having a hard
fire.
time playing.
Yeah.
We're converging. The black
Yeah.
shirts. That wasn't racist. They just called the defense the black shirts.
Well,
And
we didn't say
yeah,
it.
you didn't say it. I said it. And so we converged. And so I went in, and I was having a hard time breathing, but I came back out. They put a pad on it. Second half, just continued to have just a really good game.
It's always the next day, right?
Oh gosh, well it
For
wasn't
2
even
days.
then. We get on the plane to go back,
Ooh.
and I'm nauseous now. And
Oh, boy.
I'm on the plane. I'm nauseous, and so now my trainer thinks, man, you might have a punctured lung.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So we get back. They X-ray me, and then when they do, they find out, no, I just really damaged and injured the cartilage in between my ribs, and so as the ribs cage expands, but breathing, it was just difficult and stuff. But for me, just the way that I've always approached things, that Tuesday rolled around after our Monday off, and I got dressed to go out and went into the training room to have them put the pad on, and I was going to go out to practice. And all of a sudden, the trainer goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "What do you mean? What? I'm going out to play." He goes, "Gino," he goes, "take the practice." I go, "No, I'm good." He goes, "Man, you're a star on the team. You work hard. You never miss practice. You'd have guys that would miss practice for a hangnail. They were
Right.
starters, like, oh, I'm gonna take this one off. I just couldn't do that. He goes, no, I'm pulling you from practice, and I have to tell you, it was the hardest thing walking around on the field, not practicing, just everything, but just feeling like I need to be out there. And it's interesting how that being faithful, to show up, to be loyal. I love what the Bible says. It says that what's desirable in a man is loyalty. Some versions will say steadfast love or kindness. But what's desired, go ask any wife. How much does she want her husband to be loyal? One of the kindest things you can do is be loyal to someone. And I just realized, Gino, in ministry, all the kids I work with at University of Texas, at San Diego State, at USD, one of the things that I wanted to see, the thing about faithfulness and loyalty is it breeds consistency. And when someone can receive consistency from you, it feeds their soul. It brings confidence. It brings security. And I just remember in 2000 being on the San Diego State campus. And I would open air preach a lot at the free speech steps and apologetics and talking to people. And this one young man would come and just watch and just watch and just watch. And one day I'm sitting on the steps eating lunch. He comes and says, "Hey, man, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he starts to share with me how he was involved in this one group that would be known as their church group. They're kind of what you call a social cult. They weren't teaching biblical cultish stuff. They weren't like that. But their social norms were very cultish. They were manipulating and controlling people. And I just flat out said, "Hey, you need to stop going there." I go, "Just come here, meet with me, and let's just talk." And day after day, and then he would walk up, because we'd be out there Monday through Thursday consistently to be there for those students, right, in our campus group. And he would come up, and I would see him, and his neck would be stiff, his eyes would be wide, and he was bracing himself, coming to tell me he did something. He smoked weed, or he slept with this girl, or he drank, and he was already just braced for me to get the fly swatter out and just smash him. You're wrong. And I look at him, I go, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening?" He goes, well, man, I failed. I did this. And I go, okay. I go, well, let's talk about it. Why did I know that you shouldn't have did it. Why did you do it? And I start to minister to him about it. And so less and less he's coming up, and less he's stumbling and falling like that. And more he's gaining strength and he's growing. And about 3 years later, almost about time to graduate, he comes up to me with tears in his eyes. And he goes, look, man, I just want to tell you something. He goes, I've never had anybody love me like you have. And I was taken aback. I was like,
yeah,
man. He goes, I've never had anybody. He goes, not my father hasn't loved me like this. Now, I know his father. His father loves him. But he comes from that generation where there's not a lot of...
You didn't say it.
Yeah, he didn't say it.
He didn't say that kind of stuff.
And this young man would go in every night as a little kid and go, Dad, I love you, waiting to hear it back. But his dad wouldn't respond. And it just bred rejection in him and insecurity. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know God was using me to build that back up in him.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll say on this podcast a lot is people are drawn to environments of acceptance.
There it is.
And when you are able to be that and be faithful to that, I know that's, we've talked about this too. There's so many things like you think your wife wants you to vacuum or clean the dishes or
she does.
Yeah.
But what's number one, man? You got to be faithful.
Be there.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, and it's same with kids too, right? You just got to show up.
But football was one of the things that taught me that, without knowing that it was.
Right.
You guys, I had a very interesting career. My first 2 years had a head coach that I just loved. You know what I mean? And my last 2 years, we got a coaching staff from BYU. And, BYU's not necessarily the most friendly place for black people. and I have to tell you, the brothers, for those who don't see me, I put the quotes up.
Yeah.
The brothers, when this coaching staff came in, we were extremely nervous and worried. And I'll never forget what happened to me. I had something that was meaningful to me taken away. And I know what was going on here. It came time for captains to be picked. The teams voted. And all of a sudden, the vote came in. And I was one of the captains. Another black guy was one of the captains. And then I think the third guy was voted. The next day we came in, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we had a miscalculation.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. We had a miscalculation, and we missed this count, and so-and-so actually was the third captain, and it was this white guy on the team.
Okay.
Now, why do all of a sudden, Gino, well, come on, that could actually happen. Okay, maybe so, but here's what I know. When that coaching staff first came in, we were in two-a-days. And right at the end of practice, I got kicked in between the legs. And, I would never want to know what it feels like to have a baby. I remember a comedian described it like, taking your upper lip and pulling it over your forehead, right?
Yeah.
Well, no woman wants to know the excruciating, mind-crippling when you get hit.
Okay, so you just
right.
You just lost every woman in the audience.
No, what I mean is, you can't compare that. But I'm saying but listen, I was getting there. It's a different kind of pain that you don't want to experience, is what I'm saying. I don't want to experience yours. You don't want to experience mine.
We get it.
So what happened was, though, we had to run after practice. And I wasn't able to run that well. And the head coach, he doesn't know us that well. He doesn't know he's coming and they want us. And he yells at me, pick it up. And I kind of pop back. I go, I'm hurt or something, And so we went on. Well, being the person that I am, after practice, I went into his office. And I sat and I said, hey, coach, I just want to apologize. That's not who I am. This is what happened to me. That's why. And I'm expecting there would be some mercy. There would be some understanding, some grace.
Right.
No. He sat there, ice cold. It looked like he was just looking through me. And the way he treated me was like, Yeah, I don't expect that. I think that's just who you are. I mean, that's how you, and we'll see. We'll see if that's, and I just was like, wow, okay. And I thought, well, that's, all right, fine. I go, and I walked out with, I mean, instead of just going straight to the racist thing, I walked out and said, you know what? I'll show him. He'll see who I am.
Yeah.
And so from all that time on, all that time, now I ended up not being captain. But here was the thing, the way I led on the field, the way that I practiced, the way that I approached everything, if I opened my mouth on the field, then it was all eyes on me. If we were playing and I decided I needed to say something, and they would turn, and it was one of those things where, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't have the title and the position. If you live the way you're supposed to,
Right.
the weight and the authority carries with it. Well, when it came time to leave that school, the football coach caught me one day. I was watching Gary Payton play. We're at the Coliseum and everything, and I had certain privileges. I could go down on the court. He was down there, and he stopped me, and he looked at me, and he said, "Oh, I wish I had 11 more Ginos on my team."
How great.
And what that did is that ministered to me about, you can't control the environment all the time. You can't control what others think. All you can do is be faithful to be who you're supposed to be. Show up. Be consistent. And you know what? It'll breed that acceptability you talk about. It'll breed that security. It'll breed those things that people are longing for because they came from a broken home. They come from, this unfortunate situation and that unfortunate situation. And so it's, to me, that's why I think it says what is desirable in a man is loyalty, is that steadfast love.
I know that's kind of how you live your life, Jonathan, with your family and with your wife. How much is that intentional, and where did that come from in your life?
Well, it's interesting because you look at the long term of what happened in that story, and you're looking at like you didn't know what the outcome was going to be. But if you could play it back, you would do the same thing because of the outcome you got. And that's the thing I think that you kind of took full responsibility for, here I'm in this moment, and it's not going my way, but I'm still going to get the best out of it. And you did. And I mean, sadly, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But that is for me, I feel like in that light, that's kind of how I try to live, is just I'm going to take full responsibility for, I think we know that there are laws of nature, and if you violate the laws of nature, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm convinced there's laws of people.
Oh,
the same is true, that there's laws of people. Now, and very, very possibly the guy came in with, this is an amazing way to look at it. Very possibly the guy came in as a racist and left not as a racist. Yeah. That's a possibility. At the very least, his eyes were open in a whole new way.
Yeah, and it's amazing, right? I believe the reason why I lost my captainship is because he didn't know me.
Yeah.
And I think because we had that first encounter, he's like, I don't want this, guys. And it could be that, and maybe it's not right. But here's the thing. He came from BYU. We went back to go play BYU.
Right.
And the most amazing thing happened, and I don't mean amazing and good, that week, the black stars, the black starters, I remember receiving letters from BYU, walking, hey, you got these letters, open it up, and they're threatening us. If you...
death threats?
Yes, if you
actual death threats, not just threats, death threats.
You come here to play, we'll do this, we'll do...
When was that? What year was that?
That was 1985, 86.
Dude, crazy, right?
And that's what we're getting. And I'm thinking, why are you taking us back to this place?
Right.
But I didn't care. My mentality, like Jack goes, I know you're competitive, Gino. At that point, I'm like, whatever. Yeah. You're just gonna make me smack you upside the head on the field all the much more. That was my like. Oh, okay.
How
you want to get some?
How was your BYU game? Was it a big game?
I balled. I did. I had a great game, but it just and we beat them, so that made it all the more sweeter. But
so here's where we are. Here's where we're at so far. Okay. Here's the 2 lessons. I promised people 3. I'm gonna need 1 more. Okay. First lesson was
because it's in the title.
You never know what's underneath that helmet.
Yeah.
And you gotta love you gotta love somebody, whatever's underneath that helmet. Yeah. The second is you gotta be faithful no matter what. What's the third lesson that you learned from a football field about leadership?
about leadership. I love it. Practice makes permanent. And I know we say practice makes perfect. It makes both. You know, practice makes perfect in the sense that it makes you mature and complete.
Yeah, I try never to use the word perfect. Like,
Yeah,
I try not to use it with my family or myself or whatever, because I got a big streak of perfectionism.
Right. And I tell people all the time, we misconstrue that word. We actually think perfect means flawless, but it doesn't. It means mature and complete. And
I can take that.
Yeah.
I'll
and
take
so,
that.
so for me, I explain it that way, you know, because I read the scripture and it goes, you know, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven. That boggles people's mind. What do you mean, be perfect like my Father in heaven? But Jesus didn't say. No, he's saying, be mature, be complete. I talk about it all the time. I go, listen, who do you love? Maybe you're Aaron Rodgers fan or Drew Brees fan or Tom Brady. You know what? I'll sit and listen to the announcers go, he had a perfect QBR rating. But then when you look at his stats, he went 35 for 40.
Right.
So there were 4 passes that didn't get caught.
Well, your math is not great. That's 5.
What did I say? I said 4? My bad.
So
5 passes.
Not quite perfect.
One got caught by the other 2.
We got to add some kind of humor. We got to add some kind of humor to this thing. If it ain't laughable, then something's wrong. So 5 passes that were made. He threw an interception, and he threw 3 touchdowns. And they called it a perfect QBR rating.
Yeah.
What they were saying is that his game was mature and complete.
Right.
And so, but the other thing I learned is that practice makes permanent. And I just learned through all the practice, the mundane, the drudgery, the over and over and over again thing is what allowed me to be all West Coast, all American lists, all Pac-10, all these things. It allowed me to become that because that practice made something in me second nature. And what I found is when God says in 1 John, through John, beloved, he goes, you know, the one who practices righteousness is righteous. But the one who practices lawlessness is of the devil. Whoo, no gray area there? Like, whoa. You know, he just goes from the one who practices. So what's implied in that? You know, when we train, I tell people all the time, my girls, I go, training implies failure. But the more you train, the less you fail. The more we practice. And so what I found is that, Gino, I have to consistently practice righteousness if there's any hope for me to start to even become like Jesus, to look like Jesus, to treat people like Jesus. If the N word used towards me can just cause me to fly off the handle and lose all Christ likeness in my life, then I haven't been practicing something right. And so I just found as I practiced, the way I practiced. So one time we were getting ready for one of the big dogs in back then. I don't know if it was Washington or UCLA. Back in the 80s, those were the big dogs, Washington, UCLA. Yeah. So we're practicing, and the practice squad is going against the number 1 defense. And so I come across the line, and I smack this tackle. Bang! And he gets upset. He's like, come on, Gino. Come on, man. 50%. Slow down. And I just stopped, Jack, and I looked at him. I said, look here. I go on Saturday. It was wild. I go, Washington's not going to be coming at me like that. I said, I'm out here to get prepared. I go, I'm out here to practice so I'll be ready for Saturday and the speed they're coming at. And he said something. I go, look, see, that's the reason why you're over there and I'm over here.
Now, I don't know if you're just listening, what you're not seeing is it looks like Gino wants to hit us now.
I'm sorry. I know.
Little Washington, little UCLA right here.
That's right.
That's why he picked Washington.
Hey.
You're from Washington. My son was a Bruin. Yeah, I get it. He's angry.
Everybody's usually seeing me smile. They don't see that intensity a lot of times, But you know, my thing was I just understood that if I don't practice these things and make them habitual in my life, this skill or habit habitual, then you know what? When the rubber meets the road, I won't respond the right way.
So what you said was that as you are walking this path, and you know there are people that are treating you differently than they should. They're not taking into account your full humanness. They're just looking. They're not getting past the color of your skin. That your job is to continue to practice love and care and understanding, whatever.
I'm living it out right now.
Right.
I think I made a mention to you. I have to deal with a situation later on this evening. It deals with one of my babies. So now that's really intense. It's not even you're doing something to me directly. You're doing something to one of my babies, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
And all day long, from last night, all day long, you want to know what I've been doing? I've been reining myself in. I've been going, Gino, do not go there. Don't go. Don't make it about privilege and race. And don't just go there presumptuously. Make sure you hear what's said to you. Discern what's going on. And I'm just sitting there going, practice Christ likeness. Practice what you need that's going to manifest what God would want out of this. And I just tell you right now, if I haven't spent the last 20, almost 30 years practicing that, no, this person would just, they'd be John Harbaugh getting slammed on their head now.
You'd hit them. So that's your practice. Jonathan, as you kind of walk through this season, what's your practice? I'll tell you what mine is. My go-to is, it's not watch CNN, it's not watch Fox, it's not put a black square on my Instagram because I don't do Instagram. Mine is to call up the people I know and I'm in a relationship with or walking the path and hear the story. That's my go-to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that's like maybe even taking cues from that, because like in the beginning, what's weird about this time is like I didn't care about the news. Like sports highlights, great. I don't care what's going on. Like I care about my community. I care about the church that we're at, the people that we're around. And then coronavirus, and we're locked up with nothing but news.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm like watching the news.
Right.
And it's kind of entertaining because it's like a little conspiracy theory, a little bit like it's pulling me in.
Yeah.
And then it takes this radical shift.
Radical. And
it just does stuff in I think all of us, where like I started feeling within myself. I was talking to Chad about it, and I was like, I was like driving down the road, and I see this black kid, and he gets out of the car, and he puts a hood on, and it's a sunny day, and he kind of walks like he's got somewhere to go, and I just noticed something in me that's never been there before, and I went home and deleted Facebook. And I'm like, dude, they are putting this stuff in my, on one side, I see the need to have the conversation, but then on the other side, it's like, I'm not even having the conversation.
Well, the problem is too many people are pushing unrighteous agendas in this thing.
Yeah.
They're looking to profit off of it in some way that's going to help better them or move their agenda down the road. Yeah. And so, again, they don't end up caring at all.
If we walk down this path of CNN and Fox, we will never stop.
Never stop.
This conversation.
No.
So here's how I want to end this. I want us to just take a moment and just pray for the people that are listening, that we would just continue to have these conversations. This would be a starter. And maybe I could just have you pray us out, Gino.
Yes, I would love to do that. I would like to ask if I could share a quick story. If I can. Because I welcome any conversation from anybody who doesn't look like me. I'm not going to get super offended by you. I didn't get offended by some girl asking me, does my skin come off when I take a shower?
Yeah,
so I'm not going to, please come ask the questions. And why? Because when we started this, I talked about how important it is for us to understand our identity in Christ. I'm married to someone white. I have these kids. So here's my experience getting married. My mother-in-law and her mother are getting ready to fly out to San Diego. There's a little bit of tension. Michelle's marrying the black guy. Her grandmother, Michelle's grandmother, falls and breaks her tailbone. They take her to the doctor. They get her meds. She still gets on the plane to come out. She doesn't even know. Her mother didn't even tell her that her granddaughter was getting married. She was like, I'm going to deal with this when we get there type of thing. It was just, they get here. She just thinks we're going to visit Michelle. They get here, Michelle, her mother, her grandmother, my mother, go to lunch. Whatever. Then we get to the rehearsal. So we're up there. We're standing there with the ministers. Now, her grandmother's a little drugged up, but she starts to realize what's going on. And she's sitting next to her daughter, Michelle's mother, and all of a sudden you hear this. No. Oh, no. No. And she's pointing. She's like, no. And so Michelle's mother is going, quiet, mommy. You know, and she's calming her down and everything. And she realized Michelle is getting married, and she's getting married to this black guy.
Not a small black man.
Not a small black man. So, you know, you formulate, how should Gino react? What's he going to do? What's he going to think? And it was interesting. I laughed a little bit at it. I looked at Michelle and I said, hey, I'm not worried about that. I go, your grandmother fall in love with me in no time. So for the first 3 years of my marriage, we would, because we had no kids, we would travel out to Georgia to be with my mother-in-law and her family to celebrate Christmas. So it's like the third year, and her mother, Michelle's mother, would build a house, live in it for 2 years, and then sell it, kind of type thing. Right. So she built this beautiful house, and we're there for Christmas. We're at the dinner table. We're done eating. I'm at this end of the table. Michelle's grandmother's at that end, and I'm starting to get up and help clear the table. And her grandmother was losing some of her, faculty and stuff. But so she sees me walking. She smiles at me. And then she starts waving her hand kind of at me like this, and then she goes, I can see that you love the girl. She couldn't remember Michelle's name, but she goes, I could see that you love the girl. And then she grabs my hand and she squeezes it. And from that point on, wherever we went, I was the one that was always helping her get out the car. She was kind of boy crazy too. Wow. She was always holding on to my arm or my hand when we'd go into the stores and stuff, and we were doing things. And for me, let's not sound cliches, but I do believe godly love conquers all.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, okay, right now you oh no. Now it's, I can see you love the girl. And for her, that was like, oh, I can love you then. And it was one of those things that without Christ, that doesn't happen. That wall doesn't get turned down like Paul talks about in the Bible. It just doesn't happen. And so for me, my confidence is this. God's love is stronger than your insecurities, stronger than your fears. And if you get around me long enough, you'll realize it.
Yeah. All right, brother, will you take us out?
I will. Father, I thank you. Thank you for your grace. I thank you for your mercy. I pray that someone listening to this, if there's a mirror that's been placed up and they could see something in their heart that needs to change, that we'd all just humble ourselves and that we'd receive what it is you want to do in our hearts, Jesus. At the end of the day, the Bible says that the heart is wicked and deceitful above all else. And what we need is a heart transplant. We don't need a behavior change. We need an actual transformation to take place. And so we're just asking that this would move us down the road 10 steps further. That's what we're asking, that as a collective people in your body, Jesus, this would move us down the road 10 steps further. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, brother. It's
right.
awesome.
Thank you for having me.
You bet, man.
Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, look us up on Facebook. We've created a Facebook group where you can be part of the conversation. We'll see you next time.